Which shoe is better to hoop in, the Nike PG6 or the PG5? Today we're putting the most recent signature shoes from Paul George's shoe line with Nike head to head to see how they compare. But really quick, if this is your first time checking us out, feel free to drop a follow or subscribe wherever you're watching and give this video a like. We would greatly appreciate that. So starting off with the box and the price, for the PG6, an alternate colorway name for these is the Valentine's Day kind of color scheme, which would explain a little bit why there's a Cupid on the box, kind of shooting an arrow. It is a pretty cool box though, I just don't expect them to all come this way. And then for the PG5s, these come in a gray box with a camel design. It's going to show up on a small patch of the shoes as well. Pretty standard though, you're going to get the player logo on top. But as for pricing, the PG6 is going to retail for only $110, and that's pretty much what his entire line has stayed at this whole time. So the PG5s are going to be right there with them at $110. And this is going to be one of the cheapest signature lines out there and one of the better performing lines too. So there's a lot to like here with both of these shoes being on the far more affordable side of the scale. So checking out the appearance for these shoes and starting off with the colorways, today we have the Nike PG6 All-Star Weekend versus the PG5 Wolf Gray. So I'll just start off with the PG5 for kind of each category, then I'll note some of the changes made from last year to this year's model. So after using the zipper setup on the PG4, which honestly was pretty sick, like I like those just because it was kind of something different, maybe a little touch of like Gary the Glove Payton's shoe line kind of thrown in there. But I mean, for the 5s this year, there's definitely went with more of like a simplified design. In between those white overlays though is going to be that camel design from the shoebox. And then they also have a Nike Air piece on the midsole that is pretty clean. And then you're going to get PG's player logo kind of embossed into the tongue. So it is pretty simple, but this year's PG6, I mean, they did at least spice it up a little bit. So you're going to have some like butterflies, starting off with like the colorway, just like the color scheme. You're going to have some butterflies on there to kind of grab your attention. I did like that. Then you're going to have some floral overlays on there as well on the upper. And it's also going to be tied into the lacing system too. And then staying there, you have a basketball with kind of an arrow going through it. And that just brings everything back to the color scheme again for the Valentine's Day. And a lot of different materials and textures are kind of used on the upper for these, and I am a fan, but I'm going to get more into that and more into the specifics of that in the materials section here in just a second. But I think it does spice these up, and I even like the PG logo that kind of extends up from the bottom of the shoe and kind of peeks onto the midsole. And the reverse Nike swoosh actually looks sick on these. I know the Zoom Freak 3 also used, you know, a smaller reverse Nike swoosh, and honestly it just didn't hit for me. I mean, some shoe lines it looks good on, like these ones right here, I think it kind of came out nice on this model. But I mean, enough about the appearance for these shoes. Now let's go ahead and check out and see how they hold up on the court. So taking a closer look at the materials and the performance side for these shoes, and starting off with the cushioning, the PG5s perform really well for this section. Nike used a full-length air dot strubble that is just so comfy. Like, this is one of those shoes you can just slip on and play in. They're going to have that memory foam on there that molds to your foot over time, similar to what a lot of Kobe models used. And, you know, with that, you're going to lose a little bit of the softness over time, but the responsiveness will stay and will continue to get better. And in the bio for these, Nike even kind of points out how this shoe should feel like you're walking on a cloud. And I feel like more shoes than just these kind of draw that same comparison, but these ones actually measure up to that. I mean, the impact protection and just the all-around cushioning is a really nice feel. They actually made my top 5 shoes to hoop in from last year, so I mean, clearly I am a big fan of this PG5 model, but Nike did go ahead and switch the setup whenever you're looking at this year's PG6. You're going to get a full-length Nike React midsole, meant to give you a smooth, soft, and responsive feel. And you're also going to have a TPU shank in the midsole that's kind of there to help with support and stability, but I'll get to that more here in a second. So initially, the PG6 isn't going to feel quite as soft as the 5s. You know, like I said, the PG5s use some memory foam that kind of molded to your foot over time, and they were just really soft from the jump. But I mean, back to the PG6, the sock liner does feel really padded, which is going to enhance your comfort a little bit more. And the rest of the upper does feel easy to move around in too. So maybe a little bit more break-in time on these, but overall the cushioning is still a really nice feel. They're going to be responsive, well balanced from front to back. So definitely I do like how both of these shoes play for the cushioning category. For materials and support, the PG5s are pretty cheap. At least they kind of feel that way as far as the materials that were used. So you're not going to see anything on here like, you know, premium touches, suede, anything like that. But the upper does use some textiles to kind of help keep this shoe extremely lightweight. You're going to see some different overlays on here as well, and there's going to be some white pieces kind of built in within and kind of up from the midsole. That's just going to give some additional help to kind of keep your foot within the shoe whenever you're doing those side-to-side movements. And you also get a small outrigger that's going to give you some better balance, and it also acts like a brace to kind of support your foot. So support's definitely solid on the PG5s. But looking at the PG6 now, the upper on these has a few different materials at play, like I kind of hinted at in the appearance section. The toe box is going to be a little bit softer. at least more so than that middle portion of the upper that's going to be like a transparent textile or like a synthetic design. It feels a little bit more scratchy and just kind of has like a rougher feel than the toe box. And then around the back half on the heel, you're going to get more of a softer plush design, which is also going to make up that interior like that sock liner too. And these also, honestly, these came out really nice. Like Nike put a little bit more into this year's model as far as like the appearance goes compared to the PG5s. And I think that kind of trickled down onto the material section that was being used within this PG6 as well. And then looking at the support, one thing that these lost was a pretty noticeable outrigger that showed up on the PG5s, along with those patches on the midsole that kind of ran up the shoe to kind of help with the lateral containment. You're not going to find anything like that on this PG6. But you do have that outsole shank that kind of helps keep the whole shoe intact. And then along with that, the laces feed through some bands that kind of wrap over your foot. And whenever you tighten those, it helps keep your foot kind of locked in and stable over the footbed. And the upper is pretty thin. You're gonna get help though, it's gonna help with like a lot of ventilation though for your foot. You're gonna get really good airflow in there, but it doesn't negatively affect the support, which is something I kind of look for. So that was nice. And the middle portion of the upper, I mean, it kind of looks like netting there. Honestly, it's pretty sturdy, so it does, kind of give me some faith in that model too. But Paul George's shoe line has also stayed on the much lighter side, just as far as compared to some other lines. The PG5s only weigh 370 grams for a size 10.5. That's actually one of the lightest shoes that I've played in. And then this year's PG6 is going to be just above that at 402 grams for the same size. So two free and easy models to play in, which is definitely nice. To finish off with traction, the traction pattern on the PG5s is actually meant to resemble the human foot, and it is the same setup that was used on the Kobe 9s. And you can see there's a few different parts about the shoe that kind of use some previous Kobe ideas. So anytime you're getting some Kobe tech specs kind of put into your shoe, that is going to be a good thing. And these play really well. You're going to get a consistent playing feel, and the PG5 grips the floor on any type of movement from what I've noticed. But Nike did go with a little bit of a different look for this year's PG6. You're going to have a bunch of little spots kind of sectioned off that have some arrows kind of built in for your front to back and your side to side movements. And I think it is a pretty cool setup. And my initial thoughts on these are that they play well, but I am going to hold off on like cementing my opinion until I can test them out a little bit more. I've only got to test them out on one dusty court, one court that I normally play on. And my initial thoughts are that they perform really solid. The grip is definitely there. And you also get some additional rubber that was used on the outsole for these, which should honestly help with the durability. And the grooves do look thicker on this year's model compared to the PG5. So, I mean, playing in these outdoors is definitely an option. But to finish off with sizing, I went true to size on both of these models, and that worked out perfect for me. The length and the width is both good. The PG5s might have a little bit more space for the width, but definitely not by much. So for the final ratings, and starting off with the appearance, I brought it up plenty of times about how the PG5s just look a little bit more basic compared to the PG6. And honestly, I love this design over here for the PG6, so I'm going to start off going that way for the appearance section. But for cushioning, both of these shoes are really great to play in. Paul has one of the comfier shoe lines out there over the last few years, but with that memory foam in the PG5s, it just gives you a really nice boost from the beginning. So I am going to start off going with the PG5 for cushioning at least. And then now looking at the materials, the PG5s do feel a little bit cheaper compared to the 6s. Just feels like they weren't given as much attention as the PG6s got as far as like the quality of stuff being used. So I'm going to come back to the PG6 here. As for support, both of these models are going to have you covered there. I mean, there's no movement on the upper. There's good lockdown, no heel slippage from what I've felt. So on both of these lines. So I'm just going to go with the tie there. And then last for traction, I'm actually going to end it with a tie here too. I do love the PG5s, and the PG6s, they played really good to me so far. I am kind of like still undergoing some testing on them, but up until this point, they haven't played, I mean, they played really great for me. So for this review, I'm actually going to end this battle in a tie. And I never like to do it. I don't like to do it that way because I am sure it's going to open up some like good conversation like down in the comments. But I mean, for both of these shoes, they play really well for me on the court. Traction's great on both. Same price for both pairs. Cushioning is well balanced. Really, my only way of swaying would have been to go PG6 because I personally think they look a little bit better to hoop in. But from a purely performance aspect, I love both of these models about the same for the same reasons, which is why they get a tie. Now I'll keep on playing in the PG6, and if anything changes, I'll be sure to come back and update that. Thank you guys for taking some time to watch. If you want to buy the Nike PG6, just click the link here on screen, or we have links for both pairs down below or in our bio, so feel free to check that out. But until next review, I'm Landon from Shoeware. Peace.